Hello everybody, and welcome back to a little bit more APA ethics today. We're going to be discussing the APA guidelines and what participants are entitled to. Now that you've watched the videos, hopefully you get an idea of some of the things that have happened in the past and why we really don't want to let those things happen again. Again, bring some questions with you. And with the Harlow monkey study, I don't know if you were able to watch that one, but bring in some questions about what you think about animal research, and we'll discuss that as well in class next time. So, APA ethics guidelines entitle participants, research participants, they used to be called subjects, by the way, and now they're called participants because subjects seems too derogatory. And I think that that's a good change. It's just one of those things that sometimes I still slip and say research subjects, but it does sound kind of, insulting almost. Anyway. They are entitled to a competent researcher. That means you can't just throw them in front of some graduate student who doesn't know what he or she is doing and have them give you a lame experience as a participant. Ideally, you should have an educational experience, and as a student at least, in participating with research. If you are in medical research, even in biomedical or psychological research, or even any social science research, you should have some kind of educational experience, even if you have to be blind to the condition that you're in initially. Ideally, at the end, they will debrief you of all the different things that the purpose of the study involved. So a competent researcher, someone who knows what he or she is doing. Most importantly, they are to be protected from harm. And as you saw in those videos, lots of psychological harm, even physiological harm happened to those participants. If you saw the original Milgram study, you would see that there was lots of nervous laughter, people crying, lots and lots of psychological and emotional upset that caused, acute stress responses. So we have to make sure that our participants are protected from harm, and that means, minimizing the risks that are that we can foresee. We can't always foresee the risks. I think that in a way Zimbardo did not know how quickly things would go awry with his study, and yet because he was part of it, he did not really stop them from occurring. He kind of got sucked into it himself. In addition to a competent researcher and protection from harm, participants are entitled to a written informed consent document. A lot of times you might see these if you participated in research. You sign a consent form, or you might give your consent by clicking I agree to participate on a web survey or something. And that document outlines for the participants the responsibilities they have. What are you going to be doing? How long is this going to take you? What kinds of things can you expect? Are you going to be asked personal questions that are going to make you uncomfortable? What is exactly that you are expected to do? Do you have to drive across town and have blood taken? What is going to be happening to you? What are your responsibilities? Show up on time. That's a good one. Okay. The risks and benefits again. The informed consent document, while a lot of people don't read this, it's extremely important that you urge your participants to read the document. And you yourself, if you are participating in research, also read the document. It could tell you that you're going to be shocked severely. I mean, chances are that won't get through the Institutional Review Board. And as you saw in the notes, the Institutional Review Board is the IRB. It's the institution's human subjects protection body. And so it's there to stop studies that are harmful or unduly harmful to participants. But sometimes, especially some of the larger schools, there's some crazy things that actually do get through. For example, not too long ago, in the last decade, Milgram's study was reenacted. It was replicated, and the only change they made was taking off the XXX deadly sign and changing it from 450 volts to 150 volts. And that was the only change, but it was still the same, everything else that they believed that they were hurting the learner and whatnot. So they have to be told what the risks and benefits are. Is science in general going to benefit? Is society going to benefit? Are they personally going to benefit? This is especially true of therapies and drug studies and studies like that actually might help them, cure them of a disease or maybe even save their life, mostly, biomedical type things. But they can also benefit by learning about the research process, and that's always an important, interesting benefit. But the risks are what we want to focus on. A lot of times we can't tell what's going to happen. Like I said, Zimbardo didn't really anticipate, I don't think, how bad things were going to go so quickly, or even at all. So we can just do our best as researchers to try to imagine what might be the worst possible outcome and to discuss among ourselves and our peers what we think might happen. Usually there are very few risks, but we don't typically want to say in a consent form that there are no risks. We want to say that there are no anticipated risks or no anticipated risks beyond what you might experience in a regular day, a typical day. So this is something that's very important that needs to be described in detail. Even if you are deceiving your participants and you don't want to tell them, like Milgram's study, oh, we want to see if you're going to obey authority. You can't give away your hypothesis and the whole ruse of your study if the whole purpose is to try to see what people will do, and you can't tell them what you're actually studying, but you can tell them what they might experience. You might experience some extreme guilt and discomfort, on either side of the wall, because you want to make sure that they think that they could be either the learner or the teacher. Make sure you watch those videos or you don't know what I'm talking about. All right, so another thing is that you should make them aware of penalties for withdrawing from the study early. Say they agree and they sign a consent form and they read the first question and they go, I'm not doing this, forget this. This asks me a personal question or a question that makes me too upset, I quit. There should never be any penalty for withdrawing from a study. You can make it 99% through and then just say, you know what, I can't do this anymore, and quit. And there should be no penalty. The only penalty that you might want to make someone aware of is if they might benefit from it, like from a drug study, and they withdraw, they might not be able to benefit in the way that they might have otherwise had they continued the treatment. That's the only kind of real penalty that is really allowed. So you can't take away things to which the participants would otherwise be entitled just because they quit the study. That's coercive if you tell them you can't have your extra credit, or you can't have this or that if you don't complete the study. You also need to be able to give a description of the full reason for the study, and that's usually called debriefing. Debriefing is not just for deceptive studies or ones in which participants are lied to or given misleading information about. And again, that's only okay under certain conditions, when the deception is essential for the study, or when not only is deception the only way that you can do the research, but that there's minimal harm and minimal risk. You can't put people at severe risk or even above average risk if the benefits do not outweigh or at least equalize the risks, and the risks should not be too high. And at the end, they should absolutely be told everything at the end. So they will be given a description in the consent form of the description for the full reason of the study, except when deception is there. And if deception is there, you give them a fake reason for the study, but you still describe completely what they're going to be doing in the study. So if they're going to be videotaped and they're going to be possibly shocking another person, then you have to tell them that they will be doing those things, but you may not necessarily tell them the full reason until after the study is completed. But once it's completed, you have to tell them the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Okay, so in addition to all these things, we have to guarantee their privacy. And that either means, usually it means confidentiality, but it could also mean anonymity. If someone takes an online survey, especially if it's an IP address from a computer that's not their own, they are completely untraceable. There's no name, there's no signed consent form, there's nothing. There's no way to know who even participated unless they print out the thank you sheet and give it to their instructor for extra credit. Apart from that, there's no way to know who participated. It's harder to get anonymous studies than it is to get confidentiality. That just means that you keep their signed consent form or any other information about them, which class that they were in, and who, like a list of names and whatnot, away from any data. So you might know who was in the study, but you could never match whoever a given person was with his or her data. So that's confidential. So their data are private. We have to promise that. We can't let it get out that so-and-so is gay or has a phobia of signing his or her name. We cannot let those things get out there. We promise our participants those things. We have to follow through with that. So here are the things that the written consent form mandates through the APA ethics guidelines, and we must protect participants from harm. And by doing, in order to do that, we have to give them all the information they need to decide whether they actually want to participate. And that's what the consent form is about. And then at the end, after they've participated, even if they don't complete it, if they quit early, if there's been deception, we must debrief them. And if they go ahead and complete it all the way, we make sure we debrief them. And there are two kinds of debriefing. There are two forms of debriefing. De-hoaxing, which is giving them the truth, and desensitizing, which is bringing them back up to the mood that they were in when they started. So if we do something kind of upsetting to them, or we make them embarrassed, or we make them uncomfortable in some way, or even if they just feel, wow, you lied to me, I don't know how I trust you, I don't know how I feel about that, then as long as we can bring them back up to the level of mood that they were in and the psychological state they were in when they entered the study, then we are in good shape. We have done our job as researchers. We can't let them leave upset. We can't let them leave embarrassed or resentful. We must make sure that they are in good mental health when they leave. And if they aren't, and there's nothing we can do about that, for whatever reason we asked them a question about child abuse and they were abused and it was way more upsetting than we expected for an individual, then we have to send them to a mental health professional, a counselor, and make sure that they follow up with that. And then we have to follow up with that participant, because it's absolutely essential that we take care of our participants, because they are doing us a favor by taking part in our study. All right, guys, so hopefully this gives you a little bit better idea of some of the things to think about with respect to those videos that you watched. And there are others as well. I'll give you a list of some other studies that were a little bit upsetting in the past too, so that you can sort of see just how bad it gets if you're interested. I also recommend that you go to prisonexp.org, and that will give you all the lowdown on Zimbardo's prison study. And one of the worst things he did is that he did not actually tell people that they could drop out of the study. He claims that he did, but when you look at the documents, he did not actually give them permission to withdraw. I mean, he didn't say they couldn't, he just didn't say you can quit whenever you want. So they forgot that they didn't think to ask to quit. So anyway, that's an important point, and I do recommend that you go through that PowerPoint slideshow. It is very, very intriguing. That experiment is one of the most amazing, awful things that psychology has discovered, but we've learned a lot. The risks versus the benefits. Another thing I want you to think about, was it worth the study? What we learned, was it worth it, what those people went through? All right, well, hopefully this helps a little bit more with ethics, and make sure that you look at the notes completely online. I have some things about neat tricks and dirty tricks and so-so tricks I'd like for you to be familiar with as well. Please do bring questions about those, and discussion questions as well as clarifying questions to class, and I will see you then to discuss them. Thank you.